Okay, let's hope that I can get this video shot before the battery on my camera dies. Hello everybody, this is of course the amazing, wonderful, great and glorious, soon to be famous one day Nick Dutch, professional tarot reader extraordinaire and general eccentric person who researches into strange things, because that's just what I do. And so therefore I've got a new book recently. I'm going to do a video about that once I've gone through it and I've seen what I think about it. But essentially, let's kind of prime the subjects through talking about the concept of entities and what we mean by them, and whether this is actually something that's worthwhile considering, or whether it's something that's worthwhile throwing away and being a useless subject which no one has any real interest in. From the point of view of someone who has had experiences with ghosts and guides and that sort of thing, there is a strong tendency to err on the side of saying, yes, these things, apparent supernatural entities, have some kind of objective reality in some manner, and somehow state of mind, arrangement of the aura, or whatever, has got some kind of connection with the ability of the individual to experience or perceive these things. Then there's the other debate and discussion, which is if these things exist, what kind of influence can they exert upon the physical world? And of course, what we mean by the physical world, do we mean things which happen in the world? Is it about circumstances and probabilities? Or is it more to do with direct psychological effects and manipulation on another person or group of people to increase or reduce a particular force which is going on inside them psychologically? Therefore, these different points of view affect the approach to any form of work, whether it is an attempt to receive information about a situation or place, as in divination, or whether it is an attempt to create a change in the outer world, or which is somehow nudged in the right direction as a result of spiritual means. From the entity theology point of view, it is the individual performing their magic, their exorcism, their ritual, and so on and so forth, which interacts with and thereby creates an agreement with some variety of entity that particular entity would then be able to lend a hand somehow through adjusting this, that, or the other. Whether this is true or not depends again upon perspective, because you've got the perspective of the ritual magicians who might have experienced entities, all right, and thereby their theology, their personal theology, would have moved in that direction. Then there will be the others who don't believe necessarily as much in the entities, or cares less for the concept of the entity, and instead makes the assumption that everything performed in ritual or in vision is more for the purposes of creating an impression or an understanding or a meaning, which is then delivered to the particular target, often via the witness sample, which would be, some DNA of the individual you're trying to affect, and the particular fatalistic forces surrounding their life, or maybe some more symbolic representation of them, like a button from their jacket, or indeed just a photograph of them, or a visualization of them, taking into account where the individual's theory is. In fact, in radionics, there's a whole school of thought about what type of photograph is best, what quality it should be, how it should be made, and the rest of it, which is influenced a lot by the filter of the various different radionic practitioners. So therefore we end up in a position of thinking that we don't know whether there are entities or whether there aren't. The book on exorcism that I showed you a while ago by that delightful lady author suggested that theologies associated with entities are very complicated, but also her point of view was that the spirituality or faith of the individual acted a bit like software. It acted like your operating system. And thereby the things which come into vision for the individual will be affected by the mythology that they have adopted. Thus suggesting that if entities are conscious, and they do have some kind of physical or spiritual objective reality, then they will be being perceived very differently via a different practitioner. For some, they'll be angels, for others, they'll be fairies, and so on and so forth. For other individuals, then the energy, or whatever it is you're supposed to be dealing with, would essentially not be as conscious as it would have been believed to be when looking at it from an entity point of view. So far, from what I can tell, from experience, there does still seem to be some classes of entities which are or appear to be conscious and separate from the physical. Then, of course, there's the entity of the astral body inside yourself, which you can experience yourself, of course, as a result of studying the book by Sylvan Muldoon and Hereward Carrington called The Projection of the Astral Body, and read it like it's the Bible every single day and night until you start having weird and wonderful experiences. So then you're in a position of thinking, am I just engaging with entities, or am I just engaging with something of my own mind? And at some point, you get this kind of like weird feeling that these two things overlap intensely in ways whereby you can't really divine or define the precise modes of operation between apparently conscious entities and what could just be your mind sending out a blob of consciousness in a particular direction. It's very difficult to say. I mean, if someone is, let's say, a ritual magician, and they've spent a bloody fortune in various different occultic supply shops, and they've got their swords and chalices and symbols of the tattoos on the walls, and a desk which they've turned into an altar, which has got demon imagery inscribed on it, all right, and they think that what they're doing is giving an instruction to a spirit to go out and do some work. That's what they think. It would be no different than if what was actually true was from a non-entity concept, but the magician, the occultist, has done all these preparations and activities and just fills that circle with the conscious entity of a particular thing, and at the peak of the ritual, boom, sends it out in a particular way as a result of reaching the pinnacle of spiritual high. So we end up being left in the dark. There will always be people who think exclusively about these things as being conscious entities, whether it's a higher being or a lower being or a guide or a demon or whatever. And there will always be others who will say that we're not too sure, but we're still going to do the exercise and see what happens when we do it. So the ultimate question is, do entities exist? It depends upon the circumstances. It depends upon what we're talking about and what's actually true. And there's so much that is objectively true that you and I just don't know enough about. So we have to leave it up in the air. And some of these mysteries we will only sort of like solve when we end up in that world. And the rest of it we just got to guess at until we're there, really. So one step at a time we carry on expanding our understanding. I don't know whether any of that makes any sense to you. If it does, there's a comment section specifically for that. There's also a thumbs up button, there's a subscribe button, there's a bell icon as well. You know, you can click that bloody thing as well if you want. That'd be nice. Anyway, I'll see you in a bit for the next time when I start talking about strange things.